your business on 105.9 The Region.
Well, the nicer weather is here, and that, of course, means that drivers are now sharing the road more and more with cyclists. Teresa Di Felice from CAA joins me right now. And CAA, Teresa, I mean, we think of CAA as being primarily about automobiles. It's in your name.
Very true. But there's some fun tips, which are fun facts. One is we not only are we in the mobility space, so any way you wish to get around, but the founder of CAA, the man who sort of started the whole thing with a little club of automobile owners, was actually a Canadian cycling champion.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
And really, when it comes right down to it, a cyclist can break the rules of the road. A vehicle can break the rules of the road, but it's usually the car that's going to win out no matter what. So no matter what happens, you've got to be prepared for anything to happen and realize that if you're in a car, you're in something big.
The potential for hurting someone to, just injuring, right? Fatalities, that happens with a car for sure. Listen, who's at fault? That becomes the sort of the focus, or, somebody did this versus, I was trying to do this. But I think the thing that we need to really be focusing on is how do we prevent those collisions and those crashes in the first place? And that's all stemming from each one of us taking accountability for our own behaviors, but also recognizing taking accountability for our own behaviors is about looking out for others as well.
Being aware is something we talk about often, just simply about driving. You can get yourself or keep yourself from getting into trouble by just being aware. And that's especially true with cycling, with sharing the road with cyclists.
We've come to rely on some really great technologies that have especially in the last few years come into our cars, right? Blind spot assist or cameras. But when we learn to drive, and many of us learned to drive a long time ago, it's a little different now. The cars are newer, but those shoulder checks are really important. Checking your mirrors constantly, not waiting for a beep in your car to tell you that someone's around you. Those things that we learned at the core of driving lessons is about the skill of driving. All the technology is an extra add-on. We still have a responsibility to be aware of where we're driving, who's around us, and how to avoid potential.
You even offer decals for people to put on their side view mirrors.
We do. This was started probably over 20 years ago. It's called the Watch for Bike program. And this is a little sticker that just says Watch for Bikes. It's a reminder, and you can put it on your driver's side mirror or on the passenger side, or we've seen a lot of them in taxis. They put them on the doors to remind people when they're opening the door to watch for bikes. And the other thing we teach is called the Dutch Reach, which is how to open your door by actually using your opposite hand. So if you're a driver, You're using your right hand. And if you're a pedestrian,
a passenger.
A passenger, You're using your left hand if you're sitting on the right hand of the car, the right side.
What does that do?
So that really actually creates the motion and the momentum that you're turning your body.
Oh,
and so when you're turning your body, it helps you turn your head and use your peripheral vision to see if a cyclist is coming up beside you. Because dooring is one of the most frequent collisions between a car and a bike.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to open the door on a cyclist, and no cyclist wants a door opened on them.
And that's a problem even where there are bike lanes. But when bike lanes share the road with parking lanes as well, generally you're coming up beside the driver in car distance. If that car door opens, you're going to get hit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's often a surprise, and it's one that could have been avoided if whoever is opening the car door remembered just to do that shoulder check, or to open the door with their opposite hand, or, actually physically move their body to make sure that there's no oncoming cyclist.
I've gotten myself into the habit when I'm turning right, always to shoulder check. It's not really something that was hammered into us and still isn't. But I got into the habit, even during a winter storm. I now am so used to just turning my head to the right to shoulder check to make sure there's no cyclist there. And it becomes a habit.
That's what we're trying to get across is all of these things, if you do them regularly, they become second nature. So, you can put the reminder like the watch for bike decals, and we've given out over 300,000 of those stickers.
How do you get them?
You can get them at the CAA stores. So,
Okay.
you can pick up a sticker, put it on your car. But things like the Dutch reach, right? So reaching over with your opposite hand, turning your head to check your blind spots. These are habits that if you do them all the time, they're second nature, and that the technology in your vehicles is there to help support that. But that's your primary responsibility, is to do those things.
Now, I don't want drivers to think we're letting the cyclists off scot-free and that they can do whatever they want. Cyclists sometimes forget that they are legally vehicles, and legally they also are governed by the Highway Traffic Act, and they have rules they have to follow as well, no matter what your age.
Correct. And over the last number of years, there have been modifications or new legislation brought in to ensure greater responsibility, right? So having a front light, having a back light on your bicycle, having a bike bell or a horn as to be used and create sound. These are actually all required by law now. And part of it is a car has a horn, has lights, has all of these things. It is about trying to find ways to ensure, visibility is there, using things like the sound to alert people and to alert cars, because of who you're interacting with. You're interacting with pedestrians, other cyclists, and cars. And so, there are responsibilities on bike owners as well. And they do have to stop at stop signs, and they do have to follow the rules of the road. It can be a little bit easier on a bike to sort of maybe not do them to the same degree that a car does. But that's also part of the nature of a bike. A bike is never going to be the same kind of gravity that a car has. And so there are rules for both, and we all need to sort of what we're preaching is we all need to share the road and respect one another to keep each other safe.
Yeah, and I want to remind cyclists as well, they have to stop for streetcars when you're in the city. Four-way stops, you have to abide by the rules of four-way stops. So if you don't know what the rules are, you better learn them. And you better teach your kids these rules as well. So sharing the road, there's also sharing responsibility as well.
No, for sure. And I think that there are a lot of cyclists who are drivers, right? So they know what the rules of the road are from that perspective as well. I think what we've seen get away from us a little bit is, we used to have a very concentrated, when I was growing up in school, we had bike rodeos and we had bike lessons to show us how to ride a bike and how to learn the hand signals. Even as a driver, you kind of get taught the hand signals, but I don't know how many drivers actually know what the hand signals are. So even if they're encountering them with a cyclist, they may not know what they mean and what to be looking out for.
So there are things that you can do, Teresa, and there are things that the CAA is advocating, getting the decals, picking that up at the CAA store. You have information on your website, which is caasco.com, some safety rules so that we can both share the roads. Cyclists and drivers alike tend to butt heads all the time.
Yeah.
And that's the exact opposite of what we want. We want them watching out for each other.
It's so amazing how this topic gets people so riled up, and we automatically go to, well, they're not doing this or that, they're not doing that. And the reality is there's a lot of drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians who aren't always exhibiting the best behaviors. And that, that can be challenging, but I think that there's two things to think about. When you're in a car, you're driving 1,500 pounds of metal, and the level of, injury that can happen there is pretty significant. Nobody wants to hit anybody, and nobody wants to be hit. And so let's stop saying and trying to blame somebody else and by pointing out someone else's faults, and let's figure out how to do it well together. And that ideally is where we want to get to. We need a balance of different modes of getting around. We need buses, we need bicyclists and to get on, out of their cars too when they can. And we need car drivers because there's, we need to get to work and we need to have goods delivered and all of those things. We all have to be on the road for one reason or another. We're all trying to do something. So let's learn to forget about all the rhetoric of who's doing something wrong, and let's figure out how to coexist together and treat each other with enough respect so that we keep each other safe.
And with that, with those wonderful, wise words, we will leave it there. Thank you, Teresa.
My pleasure as always, Kevin.
Teresa Di Felice from the CAA. Once again, CAASCO.com.
We appreciate your business. We are 1059 The Region.